I'm sure you're familiar with the words, I know I should. I know I should. It's a phrase I hear a lot, and actually on reflection I realize it's a phrase that I myself also use a lot. In my line of work, which in theory is saving souls, I regularly hear things like, I know I should go to Mass on Sundays. I know I should give God more time. I know I should be spending more time with my sick parents. I know I should get married in the church. I know I should forgive. I know I've got to break this bad habit. And then more often than not, after having expressed what they know, what I know, what we know, what should be done, what should be changed, what should be resolved, what should be actioned, we then hear a single word that changes the entire course of that sentence, radically reorientates the trajectory of that sentence. Just one word, and that word is but. But. I know I should be going to Mass on Sundays, but. Or, I know I should address this struggle in my spiritual life, but. So what we have then is an initial statement that acknowledges, I know there's something wrong here, or I know there's something missing here, or I know that something really has to change, but I've got an excuse. And what follows after the word but, the excuse, cancels everything that we had just said before it, effectively cancelling out the fact, I know, but here I've got my ruminations and reasons as to why I don't really need to do it. We human beings, we're very good at self-persuasion and self-deception. If we really want to get out of something, no matter how much we might know deep down, we really should do this, but if we really want to get out of it, we will reason to the nth degree to find a compelling excuse, at least compelling enough for us. And then we can be tempted to surround ourselves with those who will support us in our excuse making, because we want to avoid those that are going to tell us the contrary, that might snap us out of our world of excuses. And excuses are really easy to repeat. And if we repeat something enough, then we'll start to believe it. Because with each repetition, the reality of what we know we should do gets more and more repressed. And we can do this in all areas of life, right? We can do this family life, friend life, certainly in our work life, we can make excuses. But it has no greater consequence than when it comes to our spiritual lives, the lives of our Catholic faith. And then when we think about it a little bit more, that's where it's particularly silly. Because when it comes to doing what you and I know we should do for the sake of our souls, for the sake of our relationship with God, we might be able to fool ourselves with our excuses, but we must know deep down, we can't fool God, right? God knows exactly what we're up to. He knows the thought processes we're engaging in to try to maneuver or circumnavigate our spiritual lives. He knows the cognitive, emotive gymnastics that we're working through to get out of jail, so to speak, when it comes to changing something about our relationship with God. Like, for example, I might say, I know I should put my faith first, but I just don't have enough time. God knows the thought process. He knows what's going on in our heart. We're really silly when we forget that. What's even worse is when we try to use God as the justification. I know I should put my faith first. I know I should get to Mass on Sunday. I know I should pray. I know I should exercise the virtues of charity. Yeah, but maybe God doesn't mind. Maybe God doesn't mind if I miss Mass, or God doesn't mind if I don't pray today. Look, and it sounds plausible. But then when we reflect a little bit more deeply, we have to ask ourselves, well, when did God make that revelation? When did I know the mind of God? How do I know the mind of God? And in essence, that's precisely what our Lord is really cautioning against in today's gospel, in the parable of the two sons. And our Lord tries to snap us out of our excuse making. He says, you tell me, what's your opinion? Think about this for a moment. There's the father has two sons, and both these sons know the will of the father. They know what they've got to do. They know what they've got to change. They know what they've got to action. The first son says, no, I'm not doing it. But then goes away, reflects a little bit more deeply, listens to their conscience, and actually goes and does the will of the father. The second son says, yeah, I'll go, certainly, sir, no worries, I'll do it. The lips move. But then he goes off, and the gospel says he thinks better of it. In other words, he's sort of an excuse. He thinks he knows better than the father. He's come up with a great excuse, and he doesn't do the will of God, even though he said he would. And that's why our Lord says, that's why tax collectors and prostitutes or great sinners are closer to God than those who move their lips, presumably to express their faith. Because those that might be sinful generally have greater humility. They are more likely to be searching for the truth in their misery, and thus are more likely to practice what has been preached. For us too, it's very easy to be Catholic in name. In a certain sense, it's very easy to become a Catholic. You get baptized, you might go through an RCIA program, tick the box. But it's really hard to be a Catholic. Becoming a Catholic's easy. Being a Catholic is very hard. That's demonstrated by the Australian census. Millions of people tick the box, Catholic in name. How many actually live according to the will of the Father? Because to actually strive to be a Catholic is to become a saint. And saints do not make excuses when it comes to holiness. Reflecting on this, I was reminded of some of the words attributed to Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Fulton Sheen was the 2-time Emmy Award winner for the most outstanding television personality in the 50s and 60s. He was a bishop. It's unthinkable now, right? Unthinkable. And he's a highly educated prelate, right? Very smart man. He's a passionate believer in Catholic education. When I mean Catholic education, an education that addresses the whole person. Anyhow, he said something that was recounted that takes people by surprise. He said, I tell my relatives and friends, send their college-bound children to secular colleges. Send them to secular universities where they're going to have to fight for their faith. Don't send them to Catholic colleges where their faith can be stolen from them. And now to be clear, this is a man who's in favour of Catholic education. But what he's getting at, I fear, is what we see all too often today. A school, even a parish, a church agency can have the word Catholic on the front door. But once you've crossed the threshold into that environment, you ask yourself, is there anything different here? Is there any genuine Catholicity here? Once we're through the door, once we've got the name Catholic, once we've got the badge, once we're in the safe confines of that area, all the excuses can flurry. And we can tell those excuses to each other as to how we can circumnavigate the gospel or water it down or reduce its demands. But when we're in the secular world, when we're in a hostile environment and our faith is challenged, it's very hard to make excuses. Very hard to make excuses. We have to decide, am I going to fight or am I going to flight? From that perspective, being challenged for our faith is a good thing because it rises to the surface everything we might have been repressing as to what we need to do to persevere with our faith. So let's remember, we're made to be saints, not to make excuses. We're baptized to be Catholics, not simply be called Catholics. We are called not simply to know what we should do, but actually just to get on and do it.